Texas. Talk to us about some of the new geographic regions for you guys.
We're so excited, Paul, about the expansion we've made into Texas and the South, with both through our partnerships with Veritex and Cadence, but also through our own organic growth. And as an example, in the Carolinas, where neither Cadence or Veritex was, we're growing organically, and we've already launched 7 branches in the last 6 months there. They're off to a great start. So we're seeing very strong opportunities to grow in Texas, across the South. In Texas, we'll now be the 8th largest bank operating in the state, and importantly, the number 5 position in both Houston and Dallas. So we see tremendous opportunity to grow there. I was coincidentally down in Houston earlier this week, and I will tell you, the economy is just booming in Texas right now. There's a lot of growth.
Yeah, $100 oil doesn't hurt. Zach, in terms of loan growth, where are you guys looking to grow your loan book these days?
What we're seeing, as I mentioned earlier in my response, we're pretty broad-based. We're seeing consumer mortgages continue to grow. What we call our regional banking business, which is some relatively smaller middle-market companies, that's been doing quite well, hitting new records almost every month in terms of loan production. But really the standout area for growth for us is in the commercial business and larger market companies. We've been building new commercial specialty verticals focused on particular industries that really are critical to deliver highly bespoke advice and guidance for different industries. So that's been a big driver of growth for us.
What have you seen from your clients just over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks as this war in Iran has kind of inserted a level of uncertainty into global financial markets? How's that been reflected in maybe the behavior of some of your clients?
It's interesting, Paul. We're not seeing much change in the actual behaviors. And for example, lending volumes in Q1, even during that period, were strong. Our pipelines, our forward view of new lending origination are just as strong, if not stronger now than they were at the beginning of the year. With that being said, if you go and actually speak with customers, you will see a lot of caution. And you can understand that if this situation was to resolve quickly, likely we'd have people contract for a pretty strong year in 2026. However, if it doesn't longer, the longer that it goes, likely that significantly lower level of economic growth, potentially in the worst case scenario, some kind of slowdown in recession. So I think we and our customers probably very similar mindset of watching pretty carefully and making sure we're ready to pull the levers of the business to address that.
Credit quality, what are you seeing in terms of your book these days?
It's pretty much a flat line at this point. We're seeing a very consistent level of credit performance across the whole organization. For us, charge-offs last quarter, to be essentially 26 basis points. I think the year before that, on average, was 24 basis points. So really no meaningful difference that we're seeing. An area in the economy that we're obviously watching, a relatively small exposure for us, but it's someplace that we watch very carefully is consumer base. That's where we see more inflation, more stress on interest rates. Obviously, Nasdaq's up 360 points. There, we got 10-year treasury yields 4.20. Off $2 here, $93.
Health term is slated to end next month. President Trump has nominated Kevin Warren to take over. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says in the coming days another aircraft carrier will join the U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, adding that they've already seized some vessels in the Indo-Pacific.
America's military is injecting power, denying passage to adversaries, and protecting our own time and place. No one said
New scrutiny on prediction markets like Polymarket and Kalshi after a special court over allegedly bet on his special mission to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. They're now calling for Congress to investigate well-timed bets on prediction markets. The Polymarket user made more than $500 million with a series of bets that were reward from the populist Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And right before President Trump scrapped plans to attack Iranian power plants, traders successfully bet almost $1 billion oil prices fall. Highly contagious childhood illness, but there is a way to prevent it.
Coronavirus and norovirus are both nasty, causing aches, pains, vomiting, and diarrhea. Although norovirus can affect people with pain and usually last 3 to 4 days, coronavirus mostly affects young children and can last longer. The treatment is just rest and fluids. There is no cure. However, coronavirus can be prevented with simple methods. The CDC reports more cases of coronavirus
Just in time for graduation season, Party City says it'll start selling products at more than 700 Staples stores nationwide. Decor, gift bags, invitations, and more, all on offer. I'm Mike Buffy, ABC News.
Breaking news
2-year 3.77% gold, $31 the ounce to 47.5, up by about 0.6%. And West Texas slowing down by 2.4%, 94.50 Brent, now trading low, 104.48 down by about 0.6%. Energy prices and affordability, major issues ahead of the midterm elections. Now, President Donald rapid energy advisors. He was heading this morning on Bloomberg surveillance.
Last term, I think, and look, I think he knows he's going to lose the House. Now, something with the Senate and play would be alarming. So on the margin, it does, but at any time, any president doesn't want to be the president who owns the highest gasoline prices, a new record above $5 a gallon. And so they will look to desperate measures. And I just hope that they don't do that, because I think it would be counterproductive. It might work for a few weeks, and then we'd be worse off.
Surveillance. And as we have been reporting, U.S. Attorney Denise Darrow says she is dropping her controversial investigation into building cost overruns by after earnings, Intel is soaring 52.8% among other chip names. Texas Instruments down today by 2.3%, up 4.6%. Broadcom down by 0.2%. On the news, what are they describing the some Bloomberg Business Watch.
Yes, it's Friday. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. Saturday. Always streaming live on YouTube. Or you can dial us up right now by searching Bloomberg. The program today is produced by Cece in New York. She's in for producer James. Lucky to have Cece in now. Producer James is on assignment right now, somewhere in the summer. I'll let you know if you see America's producer in the market. We've got a great hour lined up today, and as I mentioned, we have great news. Brings us back to the story of the Republican we have news there as well. The big breaker in Washington, the standoff. Blocking the confirmation process, Kevin Bush appears to be coming to an end. Dropping the investigation. The renovation cost of the Jay Powell himself. As Judge Jitting, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, said in a social media post that the Fed's Office of Inspector General has been asked to scrutinize the cost of overruns because she expects to put suit on the findings. The end of that. After all this time in January, after all the political action spent by Tom Tillis, although he is retiring, still waiting on the Tillis version, right? Big part of the story. Tom Tillis is with the Senator from North Carolina is blocking the vote. So we've got a story to read remembering some of the and comments that we've heard from others on the Senate banking committee. Senator Kramer, Bill Hagerty, both Republicans who support Kevin Warsh. This is what it's been sounding like lately.
If we want to grab Mr. Washington, we drop the investigation. For now, his positioning instincts are to stay strong, and but we'll see when it gets closer to the time. I firmly believe that having Kevin Warsh sworn in second, that Jay Powell's term expires is his first goal, and anything after that, I think is secondary.
We've got a lot of Democrats on the banking committee as well. They could get him out of So I don't think it's just complex in this issue.
Let's bring it in and we'll start our conversation. The DOJ dropping this investigation. And it gives us a sense of your thoughts on this today and how quickly things might turn. We got his first blush reaction just a few moments ago. Here's what he said.
Well, I think it's a good outcome. It's something that I felt should be done for a number of weeks. I said back on January 12th, I felt like the accusation that Chairman Bowles committed some sort of crime connected with the building construction, or his testimony about it, was a distraction, and that it would delay President Trump in the selection of a high-quality new chair for the Fed and the important economic policy that should be coordinated between the Fed, the U.S. Treasury, and the legislative branch. So it's a step in the right direction. I applaud it. I hope it comes to pass, and I hope that then facilitates the prompt confirmation of Kevin Warsh.
So let's talk about the idea of a prompt confirmation. Jonathan Samari is with us as well, covering Congress for Bloomberg Government. Jonathan, do we suspect that we'll next hear from Tom Tillis and maybe get a date for him?
That is the next step in the way is to hear if this drop of this statement is sufficient for him, if he feels confident in moving forward with Kevin Warsh, because he is the big block on the Senate Banking Committee right now. Last I checked a few minutes ago, he still had not issued a public statement on this, so we'll wait and see if he says that it's okay, that Kevin Warsh should have a pretty easy path towards confirmation.
Well, that's the point. You're right, Jonathan. The votes are already there, with the exception of Tom Tillis. You know, when Bill Hagerty was with us just last evening, he mentioned that, hey, it's not just Tom Tillis on this committee. Every Democrat is a no vote. And maybe one or two of them will roll over after this investigation ends. Do you see that as a possibility, or is everyone in lockstep?
I think it's unlikely to see many Democrats, at least on that committee, flip their votes because of this investigation. I think the statement from Senator Warren kind of points out where Democrats are, where they still think, regardless of the outcome of the investigation, they feel like the Fed's independence has already been vested too much, and that the president has shown his intentions, and that Kevin Warsh is going to be, as Warren accused him, a sock puppet of the president. So I think most Democrats, pretty much all Democrats, will remain opposed to Kevin Warsh. You've always got to keep an eye on John Fetterman, who breaks with his party a number of times on nominations, but he's not on the banking committee. That would be on the Senate floor vote. But even Tom Tillis says he likes Kevin Warsh. He will support Kevin Warsh, the individual. It's the investigation that's the only thing that's really been stopping him. Republicans, if they get Tillis, they don't need any Democratic votes. And so I think it's still all about Tom Tillis. And as soon as he says it's okay, Warsh should be on a pretty fast track to a final confirmation.
Yeah, it's important to point out Tillis is one of the biggest Warsh fans on the panel. It's the investigation that's the problem. And to give me your sense or your thoughts on the market reaction here, the 2-year down 5 basis points to 378. What does the market think?
Well, on paper, the market's going to be saying, look, this is clearly a big step towards now having a new Fed chair. Clears away a lot of the uncertainty around what will happen. And of course, with the new Fed chair, broadly speaking, mapped out something of a dovish view on the way to getting a job, at least we have slow interest rates. There's an explicit one way for the plan. So perhaps there's some sense there that the markets are getting ready for a new Fed new chair from the Fed. But as you were chatting earlier, some beliefs and buts today is some worse confirmed. When will he be confirmed? The Senate doing timetable and weeks in a row when really and truly the first critical will be the policy meeting to make sure he's confirmed by then.
Circle it on our calendars for now. And thank you. And to current Jonathan Samari. Fantastic coverage. This is how we do it around here. Full smash at the top of the program and a breaking story that steers our attention directly to the Fed. We'll check the markets coming up with Charlie Pellet and a great conversation I'm looking forward to with Todd Harrison, the man behind the MSOS Cannabis ETF on Reschedule next.
Dow, however, trading lower, down 122. The drop in the Dow is about 2.4%. Nasdaq up 1.5%. Intel after earnings surges by 21.8%. The VIX trading below 19. We have got the 10-year 4.30% with the 2-year 3.77%. Gold is up $27 the ounce to $47.22 right now, up 0.6%. Crude, WTI, and Brent both trading lower, 94.03 right now for West Texas Intermediate crude, down by 2%. And we have got Brent, barrel of Brent, below 105, down by about 0.3%. Earnings news: Procter & Gamble shares higher by 3.3%. It reported stronger than expected results for its latest quarter. P&G's brands include widely recognized consumer products like Bounty, Charmin, Gillette, Pampers, Tide, and Gillette. Again, Procter & Gamble right now up by 3.3%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. I'm Charlie Pellet. That Joe Matthew is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, we thank you so much. Charlie will have more on the markets coming up in about 20 minutes' time here on Balance of Power as we connect the dots between policy here in Washington and, what's happening on Wall Street. And a lot of that conversation has had to do with cannabis over the past couple of days. We've been talking to Nathan about it and others. The stocks that have hot sauce, as Nathan Dean says, and they like to jump or crash depending on whatever headline is flying that day. And there's been big news this week. As we all peek out of one eye this morning, now it's this afternoon already. Washington's moving a little slow. Welcome to White House Correspondents' Dinner Week. It's not just the dinner, it's all the days around it. Everyone the last couple of nights has been out at some embassy party or another, and they're all waking up feeling a little haggard this morning before the big dinner this weekend. Donald Trump's going to be going for the first time ever as president, and we're expecting another late night. I'm not going out tonight. I'm not doing it. Not doing it. The program today brought to you by Gatorade and electrolytes. Pass the word. By the way, pro tip, if you're going to the dinner on Saturday night, no cell coverage in the ballroom there at the old Hinckley Hilton. You'll be waiting 3-4 hours to text all the selfies to your friends. Maybe drinking is not the answer. The Hilton is on district property, not federal land, which brings us to the idea of reclassifying, rescheduling this week. The president promised it would happen, and it did, but not the way we thought. You saw Todd Blanche ended up doing this, the attorney general, not the DEA, FDA, and the normal process that we kind of expected. And it applies only to medical marijuana that's been cleared on the state level. And so they're going to have to come around to get all the rest of this. And the big pop that we saw in ETFs like the MSOS, which tracks U.S. cannabis companies, started to come back down to earth a little bit, remembering that some of the gains we saw during COVID, my God, are a lifetime away. MSOS right now, by the way, is up 11%, $4.66. And when I look at the chart on the terminal and say, wow, this thing's been on a tear lately. But if you go back, look at the 5-year chart, and it gives you a sense of how difficult this has been. Look at that. If you're with us on YouTube right now, the Advisor Shares Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF was in the 40s in the throes of COVID, when everybody thought that Joe Biden was going to get this done and maybe even legalize it, which is something that no one sees coming anytime soon. We couldn't even get the Safe Banking Act done. Now it's on to rescheduling. So we've had conversations about this week, and I really wanted to get to somebody who knew what they were talking about here, who was steeped in this whole thing and has lived it. Look no further than Todd Harrison, the founding partner, chief investment officer, CB1 Capital, and the man behind the Cannabis Confidential Substack. He's with us right now live on Bloomberg. Todd, it's great to see you. You know about the highs and lows of cannabis investing. It's a big Lucian football story going back years, and I'm wondering how you're looking at this, if this is good news for the sector or if you're disappointed like so many investors are.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I don't think there's any way to look at this as a disappointment. This was the single biggest news for the cannabis industry since Tricky Dick, pulled his shtick back in the day. the way the administration has gone about this is very thoughtful. And I think yesterday there was a fair amount of confusion. There were people who were expecting a
Yeah.
full rescheduling. But if you, and the more I spent yesterday very in deep into the night, absorbing and reading and talking and listening to people who were closest to the situation, uh, they're ecstatic for a few reasons. One, this is a multi-step process. So we did what we could through the Single Convention on Narcotic Drug Treaty, which is the same UN treaty that enables Germany and others to participate in the medical markets. So by doing that, you've now taken the burden of Schedule 1 away from medical. Yes, it's a little cloudy at first, but that's what we can do now. And importantly, has now accepted the recommendation of Biden's HHS, but canceled Biden's process, appointed a new ALJ judge for June 28th, with with that concluding by no later than I think early July, to reschedule adult use, the rest of the space, so to speak. And they're doing that to avoid legal jeopardy. If they would have just tried to reschedule without the ALJ hearings, the chances of a legal stay would have increased. So this is very much a thoughtful, surgical move. We've already seen the Treasury come out the same day, yesterday, and say that they're going to be issuing guidance. We saw in this act yesterday that they would they're advising. I don't know how much weight that will carry, but they are advising vacating back taxes for medical 280E. This has been the huge overhang. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, right.
And importantly, I think it's going to unlock a lot of the halo effect, whether that's custody and uplisting, or whether it's new states like Virginia, Pennsylvania, Texas. There's 26 states that are tied to the federal Controlled Substances Act. So we expect this to have a pretty massive effect as people digest the news.
It's really, I guess it's a game of expectations and patience, right? You've put so many years into this, Todd, with raising expectations, stocks go up, and then you find some sort of disappointment because policymakers or politicians can't get things done. Safe banking seemed like a sure thing. It passed the House something like 15 times. It's just not going to become law anytime soon. And I'm wondering if that's the essence of the cannabis investor. You have to be happy with what you get. You might, I guess, see the long road, but this is a slow grind. And I wonder if you see that changing under this administration.
No, we do. President Trump, we were talking with him. I work with Weldon Angelos and Mission Green, who Trump pardoned. We've been talking with the administration since before he was elected, and say what you will, but promises made, promises kept. He flagged during his campaign that there were 4 issues that he intended on tackling. Rescheduling was one of them. Banking was another. Clemencies and states' rights. And so far, he's on track, and he's done it in a way that demonstrates thoughtfulness and that the work is being done.
When will banking happen, Todd?
Well, that's an interesting question, because that to me is really the unlock, right? And I heard Boris and some other, Boris Jordan, the chairman and CEO of Curaleaf yesterday, talk about how this could potentially facilitate uplisting. We need to get custody first. The reason these stocks are in such a quagmire is because they're listed on third-tier exchanges in Canada, and they're being dominated by algorithmic agendas, right? With no institutional bid, no short squeeze potential, no M&A potential because it's Schedule 1. All of that will come off the table, or is in the process of coming off the table. So that is already happening. I think what people are missing is that this is the first step. We just got to the starting gate. This isn't like mission accomplished. This is okay. Now, for the industry has always needed 3 things: growth, regulatory parity, and tax clarity, right? You have the hemp loophole closing in November. The growth of THC over the last decade has been massive, right? And the normalization of THC has been massive, but it's been bifurcated and bogarted by the hemp channel, right? There was no such thing as intoxicating hemp 8 years ago, right? So the demand is there. And as that moves back into the regulated channel and as other states adopt, we think that growth will return. Regulatory parity, we took a big step yesterday, and we have a timeline on the rest of it. We do expect Treasury and other agencies, the IRS, to come out with guidance, which would check the box on tax clarity. Those are the 3 amigos, right? And they're all within
Got it.
sight. They just got to get, the fact that Trump let them across the border is a miracle into itself. But as I said, promises made, promises kept.
Really interesting. Todd, did you start the MSOS ETF? Is that your baby?
Well, no, that's advisor shares. We do work with them.
Yeah.
We advise them
Yeah.
on the ETF. It's
Mhm.
the largest. Sorry about that. It's the largest pure cannabis ETF out there. We've been with them
Mhm.
since inception of September 2020. I believe the high tick in February 10th of 2021 was in the 55.20. I think you said high 40. It was 55.
There you go.
With the thought
Wow.
that we would
Jeez.
eventually get to where we are now. Obviously,
Right.
there's been a lot of other issues. There's been lack of capital. There's been price degradation. There's been a number of different issues that have plagued the industry. But I think the biggest, from a stock standpoint, is A, the ability to custody these stocks, B, the ability for these stocks to list on exchanges and get the types of cap tables that this category needs to sustain itself and pull itself back out as a normalized industry.
Yeah. Interesting. I've got less than 2 minutes left, Todd. I don't want to set you up, but I'd love to hear before you leave us your thoughts on what this industry is or could be based on expectations. Like I said, maybe 5 years ago when this legalization push was really happening, we were going into COVID and there was a thought that the Biden administration would bring a big turn here and provide huge growth to the industry. Is the TAM what you thought it would be, the total addressable market, or is this simply a smaller industry that a lot of investors were bracing for?
No, I think the TAM is bigger than anybody anticipated. You only have to look at what
Really?
alcohol is doing in terms of the alcohol sales. All right, I mean they're falling off a cliff. There's a lot of
They
replacement,
are.
and I think the more we understand this magnificent plant, the more we're going to understand it's not about getting high; it's about getting well. The first phase, as you alluded to, funded capacity in Canada, that was a gold rush, and we know how that ended. This phase now that we're entering is US-based CPG, and we're going to see entrance in that category with cannabis as an ingredient across a number of use cases. 3.0, which is what we're most excited about, is the efficacious agility, right? It's working with companies like Indira Pharmaceuticals and others that we think are going to replicate it in essence, the pathway that GW Pharmaceuticals, the biotech pathway, in demonstrating efficacious agility and industrial use cases. So we think that this story is just getting started. I'm notoriously early. I might be 10 or 15 years early in this case, but by the time my
notoriously
kids are
early.
my age,
Todd Harrison. Todd, thank you for the insight. CB1 Capital, come back and talk to us when we get more news on this. The Substack is Cannabis Confidential. This is Bloomberg.
It's 12:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. The Justice Department is ending a controversial investigation into building renovation cost overruns by the Fed, potentially clearing a path to confirmation for Kevin Warsh. Hopes that the U.S. and Iran will be back to the negotiating table, helping drive oil higher and stocks higher. We are looking at a potential record today on the S&P 500 index. The market also gaining after that blowout forecast from Intel. Intel shares surging now by 21.6%. The S&P is up 49 at 7157, up by about 0.7%. The Dow down 171. The Dow lower by 0.3%. Nasdaq up 372 for Nasdaq, a gain today of 1.5%. 10-year at 4.30%, with the 2-year 3.77%. Gold up $29 the ounce to $47.23, up 0.6%. Crude lower. West Texas Intermediate right around 94 a barrel, down 1.9%. Barrel of Brent 104.90, a drop there of 0.2%. As oil falls, so are oil majors. ExxonMobil down 2.2%. Chevron down 1.7%. ConocoPhillips down 2.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That Joe Matthew is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Our top story today, not Iran at the moment, but the Federal Reserve didn't see it coming. And of course, we couldn't have known the DOJ ending its probe into Jay Powell, the criminal investigation that has stalled the confirmation process for his replacement, the Fed chair nominee, Kevin Warsh. This headline broke, now potentially paving the way for Jay Powell to leave the Fed and Warsh to be confirmed. Story broke while French Hill was in our bureau today, the congressman and chair of the House Financial Services Committee, which of course has the Fed in its purview. Kaylee Lyons and I sat down with the chairman to ask him about his reaction. Listen.
Well, I think it's a good outcome. It's something that I felt should be done for a number of weeks. I said back on January 12th, I felt like the accusation that Chairman Powell had committed some sort of crime connected with the building construction, or his testimony about it, was a distraction, and that it would delay President Trump in the selection of a high-quality new chair for the Fed and the important economic policy that should be coordinated between the Fed, the U.S. Treasury, the legislative branch. So it's a step in the right direction. I applaud it. I hope it comes to pass, and I hope that then facilitates the prompt confirmation of Kevin Warsh.
Mr. Chairman, Jay Powell made clear that he was going to hang around as long as this investigation was underway. Now that it appears to be ending, do you expect that he will plan to leave the Fed?
Well, that's a decision Jay has to make, but I think it was clear that upon confirmation to a chair, and if there was not a continuing criminal probe, which Jay Powell certainly doesn't think was justified, and many share that view, that he would, leave the board at the end of his term. So let's see how this plays out. But the main thing I think is important is that Treasury Secretary Bessent has a good Fed chair that has the confidence of the president and who can continue to lead economic policy. And for those of us in Congress, Chairman Scott in the Senate, our Financial Services Committee in the House, we want the ability to conduct oversight of the Fed. And it's very hard to do that when you don't have a permanent Senate confirmed chair.
Well, but on that oversight idea, do you think it's right that the Fed IG is the one taking this over rather than having the Banking Committee or the Financial Services Committee in that oversight capacity taking this on?
Such a good point of view. The Fed IG is a very competent person who I think fully has the capacity to do it, and the staff and the resources. I know, speaking for myself, I was very happy to help lead an independent view by the Congress, and I can't speak for Chairman Scott, but I think he would share that view, that we're happy to conduct oversight as needed on the expense and the construction parameters around the Fed's renovations.
What's your view about what's happening with the Eccles building? We've all had work done on our homes that went way over cost and beyond the timelines. This is frequently the essence of doing really major renovations, which are happening in that case to a very old building. Do you think that there's been irresponsible behavior, or this is the cost of doing business?
I wouldn't be able to, answer that question, which is, the president's a builder. He's got strong feelings about that. He went over and took a look himself. And the issue is that when you are doing construction in the District of Columbia, I can only imagine how expensive that is on permitting and required union labor and historic renovations and archaeological remains and all those costs, and the inflation that was unleashed by the Fed's own policy in 2020 and 2021, along with the rampant spending by the previous administration. So everyone, you're right, is facing, whether it's in your home or in a commercial context. But the president raised the issue of this seems disproportionately large, you know, compared to other renovation plans that he's seen personally here in Washington, D.C. in his own experience. So it, you know, it deserves explanation. The question is, did Jay Powell do something criminal about it? And I reject that point of view.
Well, aside from the building itself, obviously this now leaves major monetary policy trajectory questions if Kevin Warsh is going to be taking the helm, given what we have heard from him publicly. A person who used to be quite hawkish now seems decidedly less so. He also suggested in his confirmation hearing that he would like to do away with the amount of forward guidance given by the Federal Reserve. And I wonder if you think that would be a mistake to, for example, not put out the summary of economic projections.
Well, the Fed has fine-tuned how it conducts public between post-meeting press conferences, forward guidance, the dot plots, the approved speeches that individual governors make, how many meetings a year they take. And I think it's up to the Board of Governors about that. There's no statute that says that they have
But do you think we hear from them too much? Does it tie their hands? Because that's what Kevin Warsh argues.
Right. You know, I think that's his opinion. He's the chairman. Let's see what consensus he has. I don't know that how much I hear from the Fed determines what my opinion is about how the Fed's doing. You know, they have 700 PhD economists. Sometimes I think the market tells them where they ought to be a lot better than some of their economic forecasts haven't been so great. But let's see how the new chair, once he's confirmed, works with his colleagues to outline what the public position will be.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's good to ask a community banker about his insights on these things. But the idea of a new regime, a new framework, a new approach to making interest rate decisions makes you nervous or optimistic? Is that needed?
No, I think it doesn't make me nervous at all. In fact, I asked Frank Lucas of Oklahoma to chair a special task force in this Congress to look at the past decisions by the Fed's monetary policy and the Treasury market structure. These are critical issues that we face right now. And so Frank has conducted oversight, the size of the balance sheet, the focus on the dual mandate, or should it be mostly focused on price stability? How does it interact with the banking community on liquidity? So we've actually been investigating these questions ourselves, how the district banks participate. So the fact that Kevin comes in as a former governor, having worked through the financial crisis and has his viewpoints on how the Fed should operate, I think that's healthy. I think we need rejuvenation in our institutions from time to time, and that's why we have the advise and consent confirmation process in the Senate, and why these Fed chairs have a 5-year term. Not everybody can serve 4 presidents like Alan Greenspan can.
Well, of course, we're having this conversation and this potential turnover at the top of the Fed at a time where the global economy, at least a portion of it, is being held in a chokehold via the Strait of Hormuz, as the U.S. is maintaining a naval blockade. Iran is still making it unsafe for commercial vessels to transit. So long as that status quo remains, as the president said yesterday, he is in no rush to solve this. He has all the time in the world. Does the economy actually have all the time in the world for this situation?
I think we're all clear that the longer the oil fuel markets are disrupted by the transit in the Gulf, we have price concerns, volatility concerns, and I'm watching that forward market in oil prices to see if they fully reflect that concern. And I do think that, you know, if the war continues, it could be underestimated in the market. So the question will be, I think the president, though, is right to do something that we've wanted to do for 4 decades, which is end the malfeasance, murder, mayhem at the hands of the Iranians and stop their ability to have a nuclear weapon, and stop their ability to harass their neighbors all the way to Paris, France, through threats of a ballistic missile and their export of terror through their proxies. These are important goals. They're shared goals, whether people are out in the press saying they're shared goals or not. They have been long-term shared goals. And so I do commend the president for taking that action. But we do have economic risks associated with how long it's maintained. There's no doubt about it.
The chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Congressman French Hill, Republican from Arkansas, speaking with us a short time ago here in our Washington bureau about the big breaker, and we play it now to the panel. I'm glad to say that Lester Munson is with us, Republican strategist, principal of the international practice at BGR Group, And Bloomberg Politics contributor and Democratic analyst Adam Hodge is here, managing partner at Bully Pulpit International. Adam, what's your thought here on timeline and what might be about to happen? This is being seen as the move that clears the way. Everyone's stepping down. Jay Powell can retire and go on tour with Dead and Company, and Kevin Warsh can be confirmed. Is this over?
It seems like it should glide his path towards being confirmed. But I think, look, if we were having this conversation, at the bar, one of the White House Correspondents' Dinner parties this weekend, we'll probably use more colorful language that I can get away with on Bloomberg about this investigation, right? It never should have happened in the first place. It has been part of a trend within this White House about using the Department of Justice to go after people who don't either do the policy ideas that you have or are part of the president's enemies list. And so I think that is what has been shocking to so many. And I think it's what has emboldened Chairman Powell to actually stick around to try to maintain that independence of the Fed. And I wouldn't write off that he actually still sticks around because I know how much he cares about the independence of the Fed.
Well, I'm curious about that too. And we have to be clear, Lester, we have not heard a statement from Jay Powell. And we are waiting for news from Tom Tillis. This is what I'm sure his phone must be ringing off the hook right now. How do you think that he'll handle this, Lester? And will we next get a confirmation vote date?
Well, I suspect Senator Tillis is going to be satisfied with this. I don't know for sure, of course, but it sure seems like it's answered his concerns about the independence of the Fed here and the merits of this prosecution. So it sure seems like the way is kind of slicked forward here for things to move pretty smoothly. I think we all knew this was going to happen. Eventually, Tillis was in a unique position where he could block Warsh from moving forward. So we knew this was going to happen. Here it's happening. I expect we're going to proceed with business as usual very shortly.
You wonder, does Jay Powell need a guarantee that there will not be another investigation after he leaves the Fed? She's left the door open to come back around on this. And if Donald Trump's in a bad mood, why not?
Well, I think what Jay Powell has said is that some of his questions about the independence of the Fed are much bigger than what you've just heard from this Powell investigation. He really does feel like the pressure on interest rates coming from the president has not just been around the investigation, although that was a byproduct of the president's
not the floor.
bidding. But the concerns are valid and the concerns are real,
Just
and
spray
they
it
will
on.
continue beyond whenever Kevin Warsh maybe gets his final vote to join the board. And so I think it is important for all of us to just hold that up because it's essential in the strength of the American economy.
I'll tell you though, when you think about Lester, then we're back to this idea of a shadow chair. If Jay Powell hangs around, how's Kevin Warsh going to get it?
Joe, I'm not enough of an expert on the politics of the board to tell you who's got the real leverage power here. But I do think it's important to note here that the politics outside of this, in other words, the interest of our elected representatives is pressure. In other words, go back decades back to the Andrew Jackson administration. This is nothing new. During the pressure what's going on.
is when will a conversation with Kevin Warsh be scheduled?
Yeah, knowing that they have until mid-May, that is when Chairman Jerome Powell's term is set to expire, and when they would like to see Kevin Warsh be ready to take the helm at the Federal Reserve. Of course, there has to be certain communication in the banking committee, so it's going to be a number of days before this can happen in the first place. And of course, we have yet to hear from the man who was holding this all up. Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina said he would not vote to convert Kevin Warsh until the criminal code was wrapped up. Now that it is he ready to launch that code? He hasn't said that in
The
second. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now wherever you get your podcast daily.
All right, Charlie Pellet checking on Friday trade for us. Thank you very much. And it wouldn't be a Friday if we didn't get some news that we weren't necessarily expecting, keeping in mind that it was what, just 24 hours ago that we were still hearing from the U.S. Attorney General that she was pushing ahead into Chairman Powell. She was looking at this from the perspective of the available funds at the Federal Reserve Building renovations here in Washington. Fast forward to today. And it's dropped. It's handed over to the Fed.
I want to see the results of this investigation. We're not taking her from under the gas. To your point, Judge Janine yesterday saying she's staying in her legal lane, but something happened here.
Yeah, specifically pressure being driven by
So that should be having her statement. We're also waiting to hear from the administration
where he said that this specific criminal investigation into allegations that Powell misled the Senate they didn't get money into cost overruns of renovations at the Fed headquarters here in Washington had to be dropped, and that is what happened. The Prosecutor Bill said detailed litigation position, like we've heard from some Democratic lawmakers who criticized the bill, like Senator Elizabeth Warren put out a statement earlier today saying that all legal matters in the Federal Reserve business, including that Governor Elizabeth should be resolved. It would appear, though, that there was momentum for offering happening for earlier this week from Hill is that he would still support some sort of investigation into false overruns of the Fed's renovation project, just not the allegation that Powell had any sort of criminal intent when he spoke to Congress about these cost overruns. So that's a really important distinction that we have to make. We'll see to hear from President Trump, of course, that to Fed Chair Jerome Powell amid questions about what this law means for Powell's tenure as chairman and the board of governorship.
All right, first Tyler, there's a lot of the White House. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tyler, right now making run for it as the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is gathering with reporters on Pebble Beach, just behind where Tyler was standing, and she is addressing talks that will be taking place with Iran. Just to bring you some of the headlines, she confirmed earlier reporting on CNN that the president's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be leaving tomorrow morning for talks in Pakistan. Caroline Leavitt says the Iranians reached out and asked for in-person talks, and that the Vice President, J.D. Vance, is deeply involved in standing by our understanding he will not be present for this meeting. Talks in Iran, unless Speaker Roman sees the president negotiator on the Iranian side is not going to in attendance at this particular meeting.
Just like the chair at the June Fed meeting and try to take over as chair shortly after Jay Powell leaves on May 15th. The other question, though, is whether Powell leaves the board of governors. This is enough for him. What we don't know is what he thinks or what his lawyers think of the fact that Chief Bureau is announcing that she could come back and file charges again, depending on what the inspector general report says. And of course, if the report doesn't necessarily say that there's criminal activity, or would it both is the initial report without the so she could easily do that again, just Harris, the chair, he's out of office and before she's already chair. So a lot of questions left unanswered.
Well, including as well left unanswered is the question around that Governor Lisa Cook, which it wasn't addressed in this Bureau statement, Mike. So how should we be reading into that?
Well, there's not much I can say about a decision the Supreme Court has to make that they haven't handed down yet. That could come at any time, although our court watchers may say maybe it's a little bit longer. But if the court allows the firing to go ahead while they take the rest of the case, the courts, which they haven't even started the process, then the theory could be saying to Jay Powell,
in the South, and the Virginia State Supreme Court is now going to be dealing with the Virginia redistricting that did pass in a special vote just this past Tuesday. Virginia voters allowing a redrawing of the map that would make it a 10-to-1 split, 10 Democrats, 1 Republican seat likely in its congressional map ahead of the midterms. So we'll see how those courts decide and how it will impact the various parties as they chart their way forward into November. Of course, the woman in charge of doing that for the Democrats is Congresswoman Susan DelBene of Washington, who is the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and she is joining us now here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Congresswoman, it's always great to have you. First, if we could begin with Virginia, what is your degree of confidence that in the state Supreme Court, this map that so favors the Democrats will be upheld?
I think it's going to be upheld because the court is going to uphold the will of the people. The people had a vote, and unlike what we've seen with Republican redistricting in places like Texas, what they're looking at doing in Florida, it has not gone to the people. The people have not had an opportunity to have their voices heard. But in California, the people were clear, and in Virginia, the people's voice was clear too. So I think the court is going to uphold the will of the people, and these maps will stand. And the people are tired of Republicans trying to rig the system. They want to elect their representatives, not have politicians get their votes.
So what's your feeling about this, Congresswoman? After months and months of hand-wringing court cases, a lot of fear initially among Democrats when President Trump got this whole ball rolling in Texas. We're now in a world in which I don't know what will happen in Florida, how Ron DeSantis might get his arms around this, but we could be in a world where it's either washed or Democrats end up with at least one extra seat than Republicans. So, I mean, are you guys laughing about this behind the scenes? Is this a big eye roll? Because it sure seemed to be a waste of time.
Well, we were clear from the very beginning. Be careful what you ask for. We're going to fight back with everything we have because the American people hate this. The people of Texas hated it. They did get a say. The people of California were very clear and responded strongly that they want to fight for fair elections. And, you know, if Republicans were winning in the hearts and minds of the American people, they knew that voters were on their side. they wouldn't be going down this path. They're going down this path because people have soured on the Republican agenda. They know they're losing. Instead of listening to people and understand the damage their policies are having on working families across the country, they decided that they're going to instead try to rig the system in their favor. And people have responded strongly all across the country. I mean, Missouri, another state that they're trying to change the maps, their signatures to take it to a referendum, take it to the voters, and the Republicans are doing everything they can to prevent that. Florida has a law in place, and yet Governor DeSantis is trying to go around, once again, an amendment voted on by the people of Florida that would tell them not to do redistricting. They're going to try to do it anyway. So every time we've gone to the voters, they've decided, and I think that's the message across the board. People are tired of the games Republicans are playing, and they want folks to stand up to them.
Well, when we consider the game that is being played and the precedent it is now setting, are you concerned at all that what we're seeing happen is, and we were talking about this with former Obama campaign manager Jim Messina on this show just yesterday, that you're seeing more solidly Republican and more solidly Democratic districts and very few swing districts as a result of this. Swing districts are your focus. I think you're targeting more than 40 of them in this election cycle. What happens if there's not going to be as many political seats?
Well, I think that's what Republicans have done in their Texas. Because people have soured on the Republican agenda. They struggle with rising costs, with the instability and uncertainty in the economy that has been brought on by Republicans in Congress. And so we've seen huge overperformance in special elections across the country by Democrats and Republicans. Now, some of those districts that you might have at one point said safe districts. Lots of those districts are in play. We have 44 districts across the country where we're on offense, and we have great candidates running. We only need 3 more seats to net 3 more seats to take back the gavels, which we will in November.
I'd like to talk to you, Congresswoman, about the money and the messaging. And I'll start with the money. Do you care at this point about these numbers? The RNC alone has $109 billion on hand versus the DNC, which is looking at debt, and the NRCC too has a cash advantage over the DCCC. Does that matter if you think you're winning on the message?
We have been working incredibly hard to make sure that we are getting our message out, and we are. Our candidates and our incumbents in swing districts have been strong fundraisers. They have an advantage over their opponents across the board. We are in a strong position, and yes, they have a lot of money. You see Trump raising money into his own super PAC. We are going to have the resources that we need to get our message out across the country. We have incredible candidates. They don't have a message. They don't have the candidates, and the American people want folks who are going to stand up for them. So I think we are absolutely in a strong position across the board, and we will take vaccines all across the country.
Well, as you talk about standing up for the American people on these various issues, of course, Democrats try to take a stand when it comes to funding ICE and CBP. We have seen the Department of Homeland Security shut down for about 70 days as a result of that. And now Republicans are moving forward with a budget reconciliation package to fund their agencies for the next 3.5 years. And Democrats don't have multiple reforms to ICE enforcement to show for. Is that going to be disappointing to the electorate?
People across the board want there to be reforms. They've seen the violence across the country, and we're going to stand up for those reforms. I don't know if Republicans know what the heck to do. They don't even think of each other. They have created a shutdown in places where there was violence to make sure there was funding for SAR, for FEMA, for TSA, and yet Republicans were incapable of opening up those parts of the business. So they're continuing to fumble in some direction, both of them, but we're going to continue to stand up. We should be making sure that the government is open, and we should be making sure that we have an agency following the law, that is making sure that they are not creating violence in our communities across the country. That's what we're standing up for, and that's what the American people want to see.
So Bill Medley, Democrat from Washington, chairs the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Madam Chair, thank you as always for the insights. Alongside Bill
Bottom line here, U.S. stocks are trading mixed with the Dow lower, down 169, down 0.3%, but the S&P on track for another weekly gain. Also on track for a record. S&P at 71.52 now, up 43 points, up 0.6%. Nasdaq is surging 1.4%. This is Intel rallies after earnings. Intel up now 19%. The VIX surging over 19 for the 10-year, 4.14%. The 1-year.
All right, Charlie Cullen, thank you very much. Welcome back to Balance of Power this Friday. Thank you for being here on TV and radio as we deal with events here in Washington. The U.S. Attorney here in D.C., Jimmy Carroll, has dropped her criminal investigation into chair of how building here. The White House press secretary says it's not necessarily dropped. In the words of Caroline Leavitt, it's just being moved over. I guess in some way, that is true, as it's now the Fed's Inspector General, appointed by Chairman Powell. He's asked to help lead this investigation internally in the Fed last year, is now going to take the charge.
Yeah, this is interesting. I don't know. We haven't seen anything from Jay Powell. Do you want to guarantee that this investigation will not follow him into his retirement? That's unclear. We haven't heard from Tom Tillis either. So we've got the makings for a stepping off here, an ending of an investigation, even if Judge Janine says it's just moving. There was hope that the committee, the Senate Banking Committee, just get it out of their moments every week with our good friend David Weston, and we ask him impossible questions, answers you couldn't possibly answer about what's going on inside Donald Trump's head. Today, David, is what's going on inside Tom Tillis' head. Of course, your friends from the a lot of time he has to do this. Should be asking David and
U.S. Attorney was trying to pull out, she couldn't help herself but to add that part at the end that says, by the way, I may come back with it again. You know, just so it couldn't be clean. I don't know what's going on, certainly inside President Trump's brain. For me, it would be, oh, come on, please. I'm trying to get this behind us, and you try to make it a mess. And we'll see. I think part of the dynamic here, you both know this so well, gone this far, then Jay Powell's in a position where he doesn't want to step down and make it look like protocol or something that he never did.
Senators specifically at the confirmation hearing this week. We learned a lot about the way Kevin Warsh is thinking about things, how he wants to change the Fed. We also heard questions about how he's looking at the impact of artificial intelligence, the ways that he's potentially by extension labor market. I believe it was Senator John Kennedy who said, I would just be aware of capabilities. You might be looking at the idea of hyping up what this technology will be capable of doing. I know you're getting into that.
AI is to say it's going to increase productivity so much and make everything cheaper. In the short term, however, it's going to be more investment, which could drive up that neutral rate down. But as you suggest, Katie, there's also another aspect of AI that's involved in the Fed. We also had Scott Bessent, exactly can the Federal Reserve do? They have an awful lot of people they contact. Another way, they have a lot of AI.
Yeah, I mean, one of the real challenges, no bank supervisor is prepared for this, right? So the cyber attacks are nothing new. It's challenging banks for a long time. Bank supervisors have played a key role, helping make sure the banks are appropriately prepared as part of operational risk and other concerns. But this is a full problem. It's jumping up the magnitude of the threat. It will take no bank supervisor is prepared to fully address. The question is, can they ask good questions? Can they help provide guidance? As they did in Washington, and facilitate coordination of the conversation.
Said right now, to avoid the problem. But if, heaven forbid, there is a problem, there is a serious act. What could the Fed do?
This is one of the key issues. The government has to be able to stop the serious cyber attack. The other hand, government can play a very meaningful role helping contain the damage.
So that's Kate Judge from Columbia. And I did think that last one she made was one I had not thought of, which is even if the Fed can't stop it, prevent it, they've got to be thinking about what happens if, in fact, there is a big cyber attack. How can we make sure that the system stays up and running?
It's a very important line of questioning to be asking. Of course, you can find that full conversation on this week's episode of Wall Street Week. So David Weston, thank you as always for being here with us on Balance of Power on this Friday as we preview it. Joining us now here on Balance of Power is today's political panel. Lester Munson is with us, Republican strategist and head principal of the international practice at BGR Group, alongside global politics contributor Adam Hodge, Democratic strategist and partner, managing partner at Global International. Great to have you both here. Lester, if we could just start with you on what we were discussing with David a moment ago, the drop in the criminal released into Chairman Powell. The White House is characterizing this as though just being moved over. Are you surprised we haven't heard from President Trump himself on this? How he's been mentioning how outspoken he's been on his concerns over cost overruns in this regulation.
And this seems a little bit like a Friday news cover to me. And I think it's something the president doesn't particularly want to talk about. Exactly, but this thing kind of slide into oblivion. That's what happens. He took a tough line on the Fed, and now we all knew this was going to happen. But the Washington firm, and something like this was going to have to happen. Here we are, it's happening. Judge Heroes come up with kind of a interesting reflection of something over the high machine, where I expected to die quite done. And here we are.
Do you feel the same way? Adam dies a quiet death, or does Jay Powell finally step down, go into retirement, and be charged by Judge Janine? I mean, I can't believe it. Just take the win, take the W, it's on the table. It's a great more murky. This is just going to cause Tom Tillis to pause potentially even longer. My own way of this investigation. Potentially we continue, right? It's not ending. Is that what you're referring to? Potentially, but look, let's not lose sight of what is happening. He's used the Department of Justice to go after his whistleblower, agree with him or oppose his policies, or has him like that has been. And so I think there's a real risk that that's always the president. The White House wants to get out I think it's less likely that he does that if this president is out there. I would let it go off
Well, I guess maybe messages. Again, we haven't heard directly from the president about this yet. Not even anything on True Social. We also haven't heard from Republican Senator Tom Tillis. And I wonder, Lester, if we should be reading into that this wasn't as soon as Janine Pirro made this announcement, some statement coming out from the senator's office saying, great, let's move forward on Kevin Warsh. Does the silence speak volumes here?
Well, I don't know that I go there yet. Actually, it's a few more days maybe, but senators are elected to deliberate. They're not elected to react quickly to things. They kind of specialize in letting things simmer a little bit. And the thing going on here that's standard Senate procedure. It doesn't have to do it immediately. You can wait a few days to do it. With a little bit of elegance, perhaps, but that's what I expect to happen. And if it doesn't, then I think then we really are off the textbook and into kind of wild territory there.
You could actually see a confirmation. I think we've made pretty clear that the story is as simple as that. And knowing how difficult so much has been coming on Capitol Hill, I'd love to just hear from both of you what's taken place in the last just even 24 to 48 hours. Senator Bill Hagerty was simulated the whole day, voted at 3:30 in the morning, as you all know, gentlemen, on the likely great reconciliation plan with Republicans. And now Speaker Johnson has a leadership plan to unveil their framework next week. Bring us inside the House, Lester, because this has not been coming very easily. The Senate gets something done, the House rejects it because the Freedom Caucus doesn't like it. Speaker Johnson can't guarantee that you get a vote on that Senate passed plan. DHS is shut down for 60 days.
Well, it's shut down, but it isn't shut down. It's funded, but it's not funded. This has been one of the most nuanced, awkward government shutdowns we've ever had. Yes, it's lasted a long time, but the practical impacts are certainly not what they used to be. So there are some interesting politics here between the House and the Senate, of course. Very different bodies, even though they're both controlled by Republicans with a very thin margin for error here in both bodies. Mike Johnson has, I think, at the end of the day, the hardest job in Washington.